Ikki is a weak, ugly loser who was abandoned by his family for being born without magic. But everything changes when he runs away from home and joins an academy where he trains to become the strongest swordsman alive and riz up the princess. It all starts with Ikki, who became an outcast in his own family for being born without the ability to use magic. After countless abuses from his evil family, he ran away from his home and was ready to die in the snow rather than going back. But just as he's about to meet his creator, his grandfather, the legendary samurai Ryoma, popped up and told him something he carried to this very day. With his new resolve, he trained harder than anyone and joined a magical night school, dreaming to win the Seven Stars Festival to prove himself that he's not a weak, pathetic doormat. One day, when Ikki returns to his dorm after a morning training, he opens the door and finds a red-haired baddie Stella. There in her black lace plot protectors. Before she screams, Ikki apologizes and offers to make it even by showing her his slimy pickle, earning him a slap. Afterward, he finds himself at the chairman's office, where she scolds Ikki for what he did to their new star transfer student. Ikki apologizes and promises to take responsibility, so the chairman calls Stella into her office. Ikki quickly bows and apologizes, and Stella says that she would forgive him only if he eat himself. When Ikki says no, Stella gets furious and accuses him of barging into her room on purpose, as if he were Mineta at his prime. Desperate, Ikki says that he stared at her because she was too beautiful, which completely turns off her rage and makes her blush. He then asks why she was in her room changing her clothes, and that is when the chairman informs them that she assigned Stella to be his new roommate. Then, at the dorms, the chairman explains that she believes that pairing the weakest magic knight in Ikki and the strongest in Stella will create growth for both. Stella immediately makes strict rules for Ikki to follow, but Ikki refuses to be her doormat. Stella then challenges her to a duel, declaring that the loser must answer to the winner's every demand, and Ikki accepts without fear. Soon after, the chairman starts the match, and both knights summon their respective weapons, Ikki with the katana and Stella with her fire-blazing sword. Stella immediately attacks, showcasing her hellfire-like power, forcing Ikki to go fully defensive. But the more he parries her attacks, the more confused Stella gets because he is much stronger than what his grades reflect. Ikki then launches attacks using Stella's very own technique, revealing that he has the ability to replicate an opponent's sword style, which he got from watching Kakashi. Then, he finds an opening and delivers the finishing blow. But when everyone thinks that he has won, they see that Stella blocks the blade with her magical shield. She also acknowledges his strength, as not many have pushed her to use her shield, and charges her most devastating move in the form of a dragon-like attack. But Ikki activates his ultimate ability, Itoa Shura, which skyrocket his speed and power, much to Stella's shock. He then manages to defeat her but collapses right after due to exhaustion. Afterward, the chairman visits Stella in the infirmary and explains Ikki's ability, Itoa Shura, which he can only use once a day. Stella can't believe she lost to an F rank, so the chairman explains that a Blazer's grading system isn't based on combat skill, which is unfair to someone like Ikki. But despite all that, Ikki refuses to give up. She also tells Stella that if she truly wants to get stronger, she has to stay by Ikki's side. Later, Stella returns to the dorm and finds Ikki asleep, so she decides to study him from up close. When she sees his manly back exposed, she lightly touches it, slightly creaming to how ripped he is. When she wants to pull out, he shifts in his sleep, causing her to get stuck and end up on top of him. She quickly tries to pull away, but her eyes spot his chiseled abs instead, and she starts salivating, so she touches it and completely experiences a full-body convulsion, almost blasting her sprinkler open. But suddenly, Ikki wakes up, and Stella smacks her head against the ceiling in shock. He puts a band-aid on her head, and Stella apologizes sincerely for thinking he's a slacker because people have also misjudged her as someone who relies purely on her talent and doesn't work hard. He accepts her apology, but then reminds her of her promise of becoming his slave for losing. Stella tries to back out, but Ikki teases Stella that her family prides itself on keeping promises, and hearing that, Stella declares that she's ready to do whatever he wants, even if it includes things involving Vaseline and humping. Ikki laughs and says that he only wants her to become his roommate, so they can understand one another better. This makes Stella blush, and they seal their agreement with an awkward but genuine fist bump. The next morning, Stella joins Ikki's everyday intense training routine, choosing to run 10 kilometers just like he does. He tells her not to push herself, but Stella refuses to let him underestimate her work ethic, as she wants him to know she is not just talented but also a hard worker. Seeing that, Ikki offers her his energy drink, flustering her at the idea of an indirect kiss. But when Ikki pulls away, she quickly accepts the offer. As she sips, she notices the bright, almost childlike excitement on Ikki's face, so she asks why he looks so happy. Ikki informs her that his little sister is enrolling this year and that he hasn't seen her in 4 years. Stella gets suspicious and asks directly if it is his stepsister, fearing that some taboo clapping is going to happen. But Ikki assures her that they're blood-related. Later in class, their homeroom teacher Yuri reminds the students that this year, they will have combat selections, and among the winners, the top 6 students will represent the school in the international tournament. She adds that every student must participate in at least 10 matches, one every 3 days, which makes Ikki worry about the usage of his Itoa Shura. Suddenly, Yuri pukes out blood and ends up in the infirmary, where Ikki and Stella visit her. Ikki talks about how Yuri was the reason he was able to enroll in this academy, and Yuri reminds her that his abilities are enough for it, despite what happened last year. Later, Stella asks Ikki what happened last year, and he tells her that he repeated the year because there were no criteria that judged his ability properly. Before she can ask further, a girl named Kagami appears out of nowhere and presses her melons onto Ikki while being excited, shocking both him and Stella. Kagami explains that she's starting a newspaper club, and after seeing Ikki defeat the great Stella, she wants him as her headline story. Jealous and irritated, Stella storms off, and Ikki tries to go after her, but he hears a familiar voice calling his name. He turns and sees his sister, Shizuku, and without any warning, she hugs him and kisses him right in front of everyone, shocking them. Shizuku proudly argues that siblings who haven't seen each other in 4 years should at least kiss, or even bump bellies to make up for lost time. But Stella loudly protests that she's insane. Refusing to see more of this degeneracy, Stella drags Shizuku away from Ikki, triggering a switch in Shizuku's eyes, and she warns Stella that no one has the right to get between devoted siblings. Stella refuses to back down and declares that since she lost to Ikki, she has sworn loyalty to him, so she has every right to stand by him. Stella even makes it worse by claiming Ikki demanded they sleep in the same room, which only makes Shizuku explode with fury. Thinking her brother's glizzy has been gobbled by some other hoe, Shizuku then summons her water-based sword, while Stella summons her fire blade, and Ikki tries to stop them, but both girls insult each other, saying that they smell like a seafood buffet, before blowing up the corridor. In the aftermath, the chairman sentences both girls to clean every woman's restroom in the academy as punishment. But even while scrubbing toilets, they continue roasting each other, saying that their poontang smells worse than the toilet. After finishing, the two argue one last time before heading home, and Stella calls Shizuku a sicko who's obsessed with her brother's golden pickle. While Shizuku argues that Stella could never understand a true sibling's love, but in the middle of her rage, Shizuku accidentally reveals that Ikki has been treated like he doesn't exist by his own family, and that revelation shocks Stella. But Shizuku refuses to say more and walks away. Then, in her dorm room, Shizuku meets her new roommate, Alice, who oozes out aura. She then vents her frustrations to Alice, declaring that she refuses to belong to a family that treats her brother like he is nothing. Meanwhile, Stella waits outside and sees Ikki running by again. She hands him a drink, then asks if he was really treated as if he didn't exist. Ikki realizes Shizuku must have told her, and so he chooses to tell Stella everything. He reveals that his grandfather is the legendary samurai Ryoma, who is a hero that Ikki admires and hopes to one day emulate. From him, his family, the Kurogane family, has produced incredible blazers for generations, but because Ikki was born with almost no magical power, they abandoned him entirely. One day, unable to stand being ignored by his own family, Ikki ran away. Lost and aimless, he encountered the spirit or memory of Ryoma, who encouraged him not to give up on his dream, even if no one believed in him. Inspired, Ikki trained alone for years to become who he is now, and Stella quietly relates to his struggle and feels her respect for him growing. Ikki reveals that when he enrolled, his family tried to sabotage his education to keep him from graduating. But because of the new chairman, he finally has a chance, even though he knows his family will not stop trying to crush him. Later that night, Ikki takes a bath to relax, but suddenly, Stella barges in to join him, and when asked why, she says that she wants to do her job as his servant, which is to wash him. When he tries to refuse, she gets angry, so Ikki has no choice but to accept. She starts washing his back using a sponge, and when she's in front of him, Ikki struggles to focus, seeing the twin puppies dancing. Then she moves to his back and asks if he's interested in melons and cheeks, which takes him by surprise. She explains that she notices him enjoying Kagame's melons and even staring at hers just now. Ikki apologizes for it, but admits that he likes them, just like any cultured man would. Hearing that, Stella gets flustered and decides to ditch the sponge and uses her natural sponges to wash his back. But in the middle of washing, her plot protectors fall down, pressing her pepperonis onto his back. Ikki notices something on his foot, and when he realizes what it is, he turns red, while Stella screams in embarrassment. Days later, Stella and Ikki continue training with the aim of preparing for their mock battles. After they finish, Stella tells him that her opponent for her next match has been decided, and Ikki knows who it is, so he tries to give her information about the guy, but she stops him and says she wants to handle her preparations on her own, just like how Ikki would do the same. Seeing that, Ikki comments about how, despite the drastic difference in their strength, they're the closest pair compared to the others, which flusters Stella. Then, the bell rings, but before they return to class, Stella suddenly stops Ikki. She shyly tries to ask him out on a date, but right as she's about to say it, Ikki gets a text from Shizuku, also asking him on a date. Ikki accepts Shizuku's invitation, and Stella immediately explodes with jealousy. The next day, Stella ends up joining Ikki and Shizuku on the shopping date, and the two girls waste absolutely insulting each other. Meanwhile, Ikki is more focused on Alice, and when he hears Alice's name, he he wonders out loud whether Alice is actually a guy. Alice teases him, saying that he can be both, depending on what Ikki prefers to clap. And when Alice casually tries to flirt with him, Shizuku stops them immediately, refusing to let her brother switch alliances. Inside the mall, Stella spots Ikki holding Shizuku's hand, and she tries to argue against this Alabama relationship. But Shizuku tells her there's nothing wrong with siblings holding hands, and calls out Stella for being jealous, and offers to let Stella hold Ikki's hand if they'll make her feel better. But Stella refuses out of pride, which only makes her saltier when Shizuku walks past her with Ikki. Then they sit in a dessert shop that Alice recommends, and Shizuku says that when it comes to fashion and gawk techniques, Alice is the expert. Shizuku ends up getting cream on her face, and when Ikki sweetly cleans her face, Stella gets jealous. She intentionally smears even more cream on her own face to get Ikki's attention, but she ends up looking like Santa Claus, so Ikki decides to grab a towel instead, leaving her frustrated. Later in the bathroom, Ikki and Alice talk, and Ikki tells Alice that he's impressed that Shizuku trusts him so much, since she usually doesn't get along well with other boys. Ikki thanks him for being a good friend to her, but before Alice can respond, he hears footsteps, and moments later, a group of masked men barges in and starts blasting the restroom, but sees no one inside. One attacker lifts his mask, annoyed that the place is empty, but when they leave, Ikki and Alice emerge from Alice's shadow portal and realize that the mall has been taken over by terrorists. Alice summons his shadow blade and explains that his ability lets him manipulate shadows. He opens another portal, and after stepping through it, they arrive in the security room, where the guards are knocked out and tied up. They report back to the chairman, who tells them the police have already surrounded the area. She also gives them permission to use their blades, as one of the terrorists is a blazer. Meanwhile, Stella and Shizuku are gathered with the other hostages, and Shizuku tells Stella to give her a moment because she's forming a plan and they need to stay low. But suddenly, a boy throws his ice cream at an attacker because the attacker had slapped his mom earlier. The attacker gets furious and starts shooting at him, but Stella steps in and blocks all the bullets with her fire armor, the Empress dress. Stella demands to speak to the leader, and right then, their leader, Bischoff, steps forward and recognizes Stella as the princess of the Vermilion Empire. He then asks his goon why he was shooting the hostages, and the man points at the boy. Bischoff then turns to the boy's mother and says that a parent should teach their child properly, so he aims his weapon at her to teach the boy a lesson about consequences. Stella attacks to stop him, but Bischoff blocks her powerful attack with ease and blasts her back. He explains that his blazer ability lets him absorb an attack with his left hand and release it with his right hand, using the opponent's own power. He tells Stella that if she wants to save the hostages, she must apologize while showcasing to everyone what only her future husband will see. Ikki tries to jump in, but Alice binds his shadow to stop him and tells him to trust Shizuku before Stella showcases her plots. Shizuku finishes her spell and creates a massive water to protect the hostages from bullets fired. It gives Ikki an opening, so he activates it To Ashura, and even though the attackers shoot at him, he moves faster than bullets, and in one clean strike, he cuts off Bischoff's left hand, preventing him from countering. Alice appears and pins Bischoff down with his shadow, so he orders his men to fire. But when he looks around, he sees that all of his goons have been defeated by Stella. Suddenly, a terrorist in disguise among the hostages stands up and threatens to shoot another hostage unless Bischoff is released. But another hidden blazer appears, takes down both the woman and Bischoff in a single move, and declares himself as Shizuya, the hero who saved the day. When he locks eyes with Ikki, they recognize each other. Afterward, while Shizuya is basking in the praises, Ikki goes to thank him, but Shizuya arrogantly says that strong people like him must help the weak, like Ikki, a bum who should never become a knight. Stella jumps in to defend Ikki, insisting he's much stronger than Shizuya is, but Shizuya laughs and reminds Ikki that he once ran away from a fight against him, something Stella never knew. Shizuya tells Ikki to check his email, and when he does, he discovers that his opponent for the school battles is Shizuya himself. A week later, the battles begin, and Stella's battle. Due to her enormous power level, her opponent forfeits without her lifting a finger. Later, while Stella is taking a shower, she chats with Shizuku and Alice, who also won their battles. When Stella steps out, Kagami suddenly bursts in, wanting to interview them after their win. Hearing this, Alice concludes that Kagami is always up to date with the dramas and gossip, so they instantly become besties. Meanwhile, Ikki is in his room studying Shizuya's past matches, and gets scared when he remembers their previous encounter. Stella steps in, and Ikki congratulates her on the win. Then, they discuss Shizuya's tactics and realize that his skill, area invisible, and they admit that someone like Stella, whose attacks cover massive ranges, could easily overwhelm Shizuya's hide-and-shoot strategy, while someone like Ikki, who fights in close range, is a massive mismatch. Stella asks if he'll be alright, and Ikki confidently tells her he'll win. To clear his head, Ikki goes running, and he runs into Alice, who has been waiting for him. Alice brings up Ikki's confrontation with Shizuya from last year, and Ikki recalls how, at that time when his family was trying to get him expelled, Shizuya suddenly took an interest in him for being the worst one. Shizuya publicly challenged Ikki to test his skills, but Ikki refused, In response, Shizuya began attacking him, and Ikki couldn't even dodge, as doing so would be seen as violence, giving his family the weapon and excuse they needed to expel him. Hearing this, Alice tells Ikki that he's someone who has grown so used to pain that he no longer notices when his own heart is crying. And even though he always smiles, Alice wishes someone would finally appear in his life who could listen to the voice of his pain for him. The next day, while Ikki is signing in for the battle, a fun-sized teacher pops up, praising Ikki for having the courage to fight. Ikki recognizes her as Nene, the demon princess, and in a blip, she teleports right beside him and proposes that he do hot yoga with her that night. But the chairman pops up and drags her away back to the commentator's table so she won't bother Ikki. Minutes before the fight starts, Ikki tries to calm his nerves, but memories flash before him of every moment of pain he's endured. For a second, everything in his vision turns red before fading back to normal. Then he steps into the arena against Shizuya, who's surprised to see this weak bum show up and fully wants to humiliate him in front of the Huz. The battle begins, and Shizuya activates his domain, turning the arena into a jungle and making himself invisible. He fires arrows from every direction, but Ikki manages to deflect them with his sword, and Shizuya seems surprised by that. But he tells Ikki he still isn't close to his level, so Shizuya vanishes again, and invisible arrows rain down on Ikki, hitting his thigh, his arm, and more. Shizuya laughs the whole time, enjoying the spectacle. From the stands, Alice notes that Ikki is nervous, and Stella denies it, recalling how he was confident in winning, but Alice makes her realize that this fight is the entire reason Ikki has been pushing himself, and that he has no choice but to be confident. There, Stella finally sees the truth that, despite Ikki pretending to be confident, he's buried under an impossible weight, and she feels guilty for not noticing sooner. Suddenly, Shizuya raises the stakes by loudly declaring that the outcome of this battle will determine Ikki's graduation. The crowd erupts, mocking Ikki, calling him a weak doormat whose win over Stella was a fluke. When Shizuya lands a brutal shot to Ikki's stomach, Ikki collapses, bleeding on the ground, all the while Shizuya and the crowd mock him for being the worst one, to crush him mentally. But Stella has had enough. She stands up and orders everyone to stop insulting the knight she loves. She calls out to Ikki, demanding that he stand and look cool for her, like he always does, and her voice reaches him. Ikki forces himself back to his feet, and with pure determination, he punches his own face to focus. He activates his trump card, Itoa Shura, and he catches an arrow with his bare hand, shocking Shizuya. Then, using all of his senses and the experience from battle, Ikki deflects all the arrows Shizuya fires at him, step by step, approaching him like a man possessed. All the while, Shizuya backs off like his prey. Just as Ikki is about to strike him down, Shizuya panics and forfeits the match, shouting his surrender seconds before Ikki's blade reaches him. With that, Ikki is declared the winner, and while his friends cheer for him, he manages to glance up at Stella and give her a reassuring smile before finally collapsing from exhaustion. Later, Ikki wakes up in the hospital with Stella sleeping beside him. When she wakes up and realizes he's staring, she gets flustered and calls him a creep for watching her sleep. Suddenly, Ikki tells her that he likes her, and Stella turns bright red and orders him to close his eyes. When he does, she shyly kisses him on the cheek, showing she feels the same. Ikki pulls her into a hug, and she hugs him back. Holding each other close, Ikki tells her that with her by his side, he feels like the strongest man alive. Then they promise that one day, they'll both reach the top and face each other in the final. 2 weeks after they started dating, Stella trains like a woman possessed, frustrated that after everything that's happened between them, Ikki still hasn't even tried making a move. Meanwhile, Ikki wins another match, and his reputation skyrockets, slowly shaking off the worst one and even gaining fans. After class, Kagami and a group of girls approach Ikki, begging him to teach them how he uses his sword. Stella watches from the sidelines, jealousy eating her alive, but she refuses to say anything because she doesn't want to look clingy. Meanwhile, the dudes in class rage with jealousy because Ikki is getting surrounded by girls like he's the male equivalent of Bonnie Blue. But then, their homeroom teacher walks in, and just like any other day, she immediately loses blood and collapses. Back home, Stella tells Ikki that he doesn't have to teach those thirsty hoes, saying that they are all talented blazers, and he shouldn't help his enemies. But Ikki disagrees, saying that if he can help them get stronger and avoid another situation like the one they faced at the mall, he wants to do it. When he suddenly gives her a soft smile, Stella instantly blushes, and when asked, she brushes it off and instead invites him to a date, considering they have been dating for 2 weeks. But to her disappointment, Ikki falls asleep while she was talking, sending Stella into silent, polite girlfriend rage. The next morning, Ikki is joined by the girls from the other day, and he begins training by making them stand on one leg. When Kagami asks what in the world he's doing, he proudly says that he's teaching them to be the dragon warrior, like what Shifu would do. And Kagami takes notes of all of it to put in her newspaper. Just then, a squad of jealous gooners storms the scene, confronting Ikki about being the new popular Mr. Fat Willy. They pull out their blazer weapons, with their leader carrying a literal blicky. They attack him, but without even using his weapon or powers, Ikki maneuvers and humiliates all of them, even stopping the gun from firing, forcing them all to surrender. Suddenly, they all bow down, admitting that in truth, they are all jealous of Ikki, his popularity, his chadness, and his aura, so they beg Ikki to teach them to be like him. Being punk rock like Superman, Ikki agrees to train them, which increases his popularity even more. Then, during training, Stella brings drinks for Ikki. But before she can give them to him, Shizuku swoops in with drinks of her own. When Ikki drinks Shizuku's drink first, Shizuku says that it has her love juice in it, but quickly says that she's only joking. Shizuku then points out that Stella is hiding 2 drinks behind her back, exposing her, but she quickly makes an excuse and gulps them both down with tears in her eyes. To add insult to injury, Shizuku asks Ikki to train her in swordsmanship, and Stella immediately demands the same treatment. But Ikki gently says she doesn't need his training, considering her skill level, which results in Stella storming off. On her way back home, Stella runs into Alice, who is holding a dating simulation game that he got from Kagami. Stella notices one of the guys looks exactly like Ikki, and instantly becomes invested, so she asks to play it. Later at home, she plays it alone, and unlike real life, she wants to be more honest, so she chooses every option that lets her fictional Ikki look-alike fall for her and clap her hard without any annoying flat sister character around. But right when the game is getting good, Ikki walks in on her playing, and she quickly hides the game. Then, Ikki tells her that he will be taking his students to train in a swimming pool, and asks if she wants to tag along. Stella says she doesn't see why she should, still annoyed, knowing he wouldn't even train her, but Ikki wants to explain himself. They sit down, and Ikki says that forcing his sword style onto her would hold her back, because hers is already far beyond what he can teach, and that he loves her most when she's someone who surpasses his imagination. Hearing that, Stella melts on the spot and agrees to come. The next day, Stella joins Ikki and a class at the pool, and the girls change into their swimsuits, making Ikki, and the boys realize how blessed they are to have eyes. While Ikki trains the group, Stella sits alone, jealous that Ikki isn't paying attention to her. She watches the way he teaches and tries copying the techniques, hoping it'll help her feel closer to him. But just when she starts focusing, Kagami pops up out of nowhere and nearly gives her a heart attack. Kagami immediately asks her how far or deep she has gone with Ikki, considering that she's his girlfriend and future wife. Stella tries denying that she's dating Ikki, saying that a princess like her would never date a bum like him, but Kagami catches her lie instantly. She warns that if they're not dating, then Kagami can claim Ikki and ride his pickle and be his baby mama. Hearing that, Stella panics and admits that she is Ikki's lover. Seeing her reaction, Kagami promises she'll keep it secret as part of her journalistic integrity, which calms Stella. Then she repeats her question, wanting to know how far they have gone. When Stella admits they haven't done anything yet, Kagami is stunned. Stella confesses that she does want to be a proper romantic partner, but she doesn't want Ikki to think she's pushy or a thirsty hoe. Kagami warns her that she can move slowly if she wants, but if she moves too slowly, some other freaky girl will take Ikki from her using their honey cave. She then goes to fetch Ikki to give them some alone time. Meanwhile, Shizuku vents to Alice, asking if it's wrong for a little sister to love her big brother romantically. Alice responds, saying that it is wrong, but assures her that Alabama love is real, and that if there is a hole, there's a way. Shizuku then asks if it's possible to make Ikki see her as a woman, and while Alice says that it is difficult, her odds are not 0. Back with Stella, she awkwardly asks Ikki what he thinks of her swimsuit, and when he gives the most average compliment possible, she feels down instantly. Ikki then tries talking about their relationship and how they should communicate better, but Stella misreads every word and thinks he's breaking up with her, believing that she was too slow to win his heart. She gets upset, claiming that it is over, while Ikki is confused by what she means. The two of them spiral into a loud, dramatic misunderstanding and argument about what they both truly want from each other, which ends with them both confessing their love while believing the other wants to end things. After calming down, Ikki suggests that they speak out what they want from each other, and they both ask for a kiss at the same time. Ikki gives Stella a timid little kiss, but Stella wants more, so he gives her more of his love. On the bus home, they hold hands, enjoying the moment, but suddenly, both of their phones buzz with an email, and they have been assigned their next opponents. Both of them get student council members, and those members are eager to show them the true power of the council. Then the battle starts, and Ikki is going against the literal Flash, who runs circles around him with insane pace. Meanwhile, Stella is locked in with a walking tank who spins his weapon like a helicopter. But no matter how hard the council members try, both Ikki and Stella defeat them cleanly, securing their 3rd consecutive win and keeping their undefeated streak alive. Afterward, Ikki and the gang head home, and the girls argue about who gets to have Ikki's attention, but without making a scene. Alice casually points out that someone has been following them, and Ikki says that he has noticed too, as the stalker has been following them for a full week. Alice suggests they call her out, so they confront the girl hiding in the shadows, and she panics so hard she steps backward off a small ledge. Later, they visit her in the hospital, where she thanks them for saving her and introduces herself as Ayatsuji Ayase. Ikki immediately recognizes her family name and asks if she's related to the legendary Ayatsuji Kato. Ayase confirms it, and Stella, confused, asks who that is. Shizuku explains that Kato is a prodigy swordsman, who is a competition-winning legend whose fame should have been massive if not for the fact that he isn't a blazer. She adds that he is known as the last samurai, but is not Tom Cruise. Ikki gushes like a fanboy, explaining he learns so much from watching Kato's matches, so he feels honored to meet Kato's daughter. But when he asks where her father is now, Ayase sadly explains that Kato suffered an accident during a tournament and has been out of the scene since, trying to get back on track. Shizuku asks why Oyase has been stalking Ikki. The girls immediately jump to conclusions, thinking she wants to sneak between them and get in front of the line for a ride on Ikki's slimy glizzy. But Ayase quickly clarifies that she only wants to learn swordsmanship from Ikki and didn't know how to ask. Hearing that, Ikki offers to let her join their sessions, and the next day, while everyone trains, Ikki spars with Ayase one-on-one. He immediately sees the problem and that she is stuck because she's trying to replicate her father's style perfectly. Ayase admits that she feels like she can't catch up to him, and Ikki tells her gently, but honestly, that she'll never grow if she only imitates her father's techniques. At first, she gets offended, thinking that he's insulting his father's ability, but Ikki explains that the reason she can't fully copy her father because their builds and strengths are different. So he suggests that she needs a sword style that fits her. He offers to adjust her form and warns her she won't be able to go back once she changes it, but Ayase agrees. Ikki starts guiding her posture by adjusting her stance and legs, and while the other wants the same treatment, Ikki calmly explains the corrections she needs to make, all the while Ayase is trying her best not to turn her Grand Canyon into Niagara Falls. But as soon as they try out her new form, she finds that she has improved drastically, so she thanks him sincerely for solving what she has been struggling with. On the way home, Ikki apologizes if the hands-on adjustments were uncomfortable, but Ayase reassures him she didn't mind at all, as she very much respects people who devote themselves fully to their craft. When she notices Stella and Shizuku glaring daggers at her, she quickly clarifies she's not trying to steal Ikki from them. Stella asks Shizuku if it bothers her seeing Ikki get close to another girl, but to her surprise, Shizuku calmly says that she doesn't mind it as long as her beloved Ikki ends up being with the right person and is happy. Then, Ayase tells Ikki she believes training with him will help her reach the tournament stage and asks him to continue coaching her, to which Ikki agrees. That night, before they go to sleep, Stella quietly asks if Ikki enjoyed training Ayase and touching her body all over, but Ikki assures her that his only focus was on helping Ayase improve. Feeling down, Stella asks him to hold her hand, and seeing that she's sad, Ikki holds it and tells her that the only girl he loves is her, and only her. The next day, they continue training, with Stella sparring with Ayase, while Ikki watches. Afterward, Ayase treats Ikki and Stella to a meal to thank them, and Ayase watches in awe seeing Stella eats 4 plates of food but still has a body that is to die for. Ayase also expresses her thanks to Ikki, and says that through her training with him, she feels even closer to her father. Ikki assures her that she's more than capable of reaching it by herself, but she tells them that she can never take back what was stolen. Just then, a group of delinquent schmucks walks in, and they recognize Ayase and start harassing her. Ikki tries politely asking them to stop, and while the goons are laughing at his attempt, their leader, Kurado, sees that he's a swordsman. He approaches Ikki, apologizes, and pours him a drink. Ikki drinks it, but suddenly gets the bottle smashed on his head. Kurado tries to provoke Ikki into a fight, demanding that he call upon his sword, and Stella jumps in to defend him, but Ikki stops her, refusing to fight in public. Annoyed by his stoic attitude, Kurado spits on Ikki's face, and Stella nearly goes ballistic, but Ikki stops her once more, still refusing to fight. The goons assume that Ikki is a coward, and they leave the place alone. Stella can't understand why Ikki held back, confident that he could beat all of them, but Ikki tells her that Kurado is extremely strong. Plus, he explains that fighting in public would get him expelled, so he refuses to do anything. Just then, a white-haired dude and a girl carrying an umbrella pop up and praise Ikki for not escalating. They warn him that Kurado was ranked 8th in the 7 Stars tournament the previous year, so avoiding a fight with him was smart. Stella asks who these two are, and Ikki introduces them as Masogi and Kanata, members of the student council. They leave the place, and on their walk, Stella asks Ayase who the delinquents were. Before she can answer, both she and Ikki receive an email, and they see that their next battle is against each other. Ayase runs off immediately, refusing to say a word. For days, she doesn't show up to training, worrying Ikki. During a talk with Alice, he concludes that Ayase probably knows she can't beat Ikki in their battle, and she's planning something before the match. Ikki is impressed that Alice reached that conclusion, so he shows Alice a text from Ayase asking him to meet her alone. Alice warns it's obviously a trap, but Ikki says he's going anyway, confident that he will still win. That night, he meets up with Ayase on the rooftop, where Ayase is waiting for him, looking like Sadako. She brings up the promise he and Stella made, the vow to fight each other in the 7 Stars Swordsmanship tournament, and when Ikki confirms that it is true, Ayase immediately asks what he plans to do if he faces an opponent he simply cannot defeat. Ikki answers without hesitation and says that no matter what, he will fight honestly and use every legitimate skill he has, because to him, that is the proper path for a swordsman. Ayase disagrees fiercely, saying that, unlike him, she is willing to do anything, even using dirty tactics if that's what it takes to win. Before Ikki can respond, Ayase suddenly draws her weapon. She shatters the barrier behind her and throws herself backward as if she intends to end her life right there. Ikki immediately activates a Toe Ashura, pushing his body past its limits. With that burst of power, he launches forward, grabbing Ayase and propelling both of them off the building. They crash into the pool below, and the impact with the water saves them from certain death. When they climb out of the water, Ayase looks delighted that the reckless hero used his trump card, and Ikki realizes, to his horror, that her apparent attempt was nothing more than a trap to force him into using it Toe Ashura. She points out that their selection match begins in 10 hours, which gives him almost no time to recover. She claims she now has a very real chance of victory, not because her natural talent surpasses his, but because she knows he cannot rely on his ultimate technique. Meanwhile, completely unaware of the chaos elsewhere, Stella is sound asleep. She happily dreams about Ikki taking her to Pound Town, until she suddenly wakes up to find Ikki lying face down on her chest. She panics at first, thinking he's making a move on her, but her fear fades when she realizes Ikki is unconscious. The next morning, Ikki wakes up in a hospital bed surrounded by his friends, all relieved to see him awake. Before he can explain anything, the chairman appears and asks to speak with him privately. She already knows he caused the explosion at the building the night before, and Ikki is fully prepared to accept whatever punishment she thinks is appropriate, but he refuses to give details about Ayase's involvement. Instead, he asks what happened to her, and the chairman explains the truth. Years earlier, Ayase's father, Kato, known as the Last Samurai, accepted a challenge from another swordsman. That opponent was Kurado, and Kato lost, and because of the terms of the duel, all the property, including the dojo, transferred to Kurado. The defeat was so devastating that Kato fell into a coma that lasted 2 full years. Ayase has carried the weight of her father's teachings ever since, as he always told her to walk the path of an honorable samurai. But after betraying Ikki and attempting to manipulate him, she feels crushed by guilt. She once confronted Kurado, but because she was far too inexperienced, she lost miserably. Now she believes her only chance to reclaim what was taken is to advance deep enough into the tournament to face him again. Meanwhile, Kato awakens from his coma and apologizes for failing to protect their legacy, but Ayase begs him not to blame himself and promises him that she will restore what was lost. Meanwhile, Ikki and his friends discuss the situation. Even after Ayase's underhanded actions, Ikki refuses to fight dirty, and he insists on approaching their match with complete fairness and sincerity. Afterwards, he asks Stella to come with him somewhere, and together, they meet Yuri, their teacher. Ikki tells Yuri that Ayase plans to cheat in their match, and Yuri believes they should report it immediately, but Ikki asks her not to. He argues that deep down, Ayase still has a good heart, and that her desperate choices come from the trauma of losing her family's dojo to Kurado. When the match finally begins, both competitors enter the arena, and Ayase tells Ikki she's surprised he actually showed up after everything. They draw their blades and Ikki strikes first, but Ayase flicks her finger in a strange motion, creating a deep slash across Ikki's body. He retreats instantly, only to be struck again from behind. As their blades collide, she finally reveals the name of her ability, Scratch of the Wind. The two separate after a minute of fierce sword clashes, and Ikki figures out that she planted invisible whirlwinds across the arena before the fight even started, which are traps she can activate at will. She charges again, and Shizuku comments that planting traps ahead of time violates school rules, meaning Ikki would be declared the winner if officials found out. She then uses another ability of her sword to carve a deep cut into his arm, and Ikki realizes that if she hits a vital spot with one of these hidden attacks, it could be fatal. Ayase pushes forward relentlessly, attempting to finish the match with a decisive technique, but Ikki blocks her blade using the handle of his own, a move Shizuku immediately recognizes as his special technique, Irregular Guard. Ikki then calls Ayase out for abandoning the techniques he taught her, and for turning her back on the honorable swordsmanship her father raised her with. She argues that staying pure has never achieved anything for her, but Ikki vows that he will restore her pride with all his strength. She unleashes a storm of invisible slashes, but Ikki charges forward, dodging every wind trap using perfect vision. Her frustration creates the opening Ikki needs, and as Ayase throws herself at him with everything she has left, Ikki uses his hidden technique, Shinkiro-A, to end the fight. But Shizuku notices that Ikki switched his weapon into safe mode before striking, and Stella explains that Ikki's goal was never just to win, but he wanted to save Ayase as well. Afterward, Ikki tells Ayase to let him help her regain everything she has lost. When he extends his hand to her, she suddenly sees her father in him. She grasps his hand, begging for help, and Ikki smiles gently, saying those are the words he was waiting to hear. Years ago, Ayase's father, Kato, began to lose the strength needed to properly wield his sword due to a heart condition, so he stepped away from fighting. But even as his body weakens, he refuses to let his dojo's legacy fade. He pours everything he has into training his students, and among them, his daughter Ayase shows the strongest dedication. Kato teaches her the sacred family technique that was passed down through generations. And although Ayase struggles in the early stages, he does not allow her to give up. Again and again, he reminds her that a true swordsman must stay righteous, protect the weak, and despise evil, as their technique exists to defend people, not to harm them. And despite his failing body, Kato continues sharing his knowledge with Ayase. Then one day, disaster arrives. A ruthless challenger named Kuroda appears at the dojo and demands a duel for ownership of the entire place. Kato accepts, relying on his noble sword style, while Kuroda fights wildly, like a beast with no restraint. Blow after blow, Kuroda knocks Kato down, yet Kato refuses to surrender or let his family's name be disgraced by someone he sees as nothing more than a thug. Ayase and another student begged Kato to give up, but Kato refused. He said he could never forgive Kuroda for hurting his daughter, then charged at the Sword Eater once more. Kuroda began provoking the old man, taunting him until their clash grew even more violent. Eventually, Kato was knocked off his feet, with tears streaming down her face. Ayase tried to make him stop, but he yelled at her to stay out of his duel. Desperate, Kato attempted to use his ultimate technique, but his body failed him before he could strike. This gave Kuroda the chance to land a devastating blow that ended the match completely. Ayase caught her father as he fell, and he apologized to her before losing consciousness. With Kato losing the duel, his family is forced to leave the dojo they cherished. Returning to the present, Ayase leads Ikki and Stella to the same dojo, which now sits trashed and vandalized by Kuroda's men. Ayase tells Ikki and Stella that Kuroda's swordsmanship is nothing but raw, ruthless violence. She says that a brute like him turning her father into a broken shell is something she can never forgive. Eventually, the three of them reach what used to be Ayase's family home. Inside, they find a group of rough-looking thugs, and without hesitation, Ikki demands that they take him to Kuroda. A few minutes later, he arrives at the room where the Sword Eater is staying and challenges him to a duel. Ikki declares that he will reclaim the dojo for Ayase, but Kuroda only mocks him, saying he isn't acting like the coward he was last time. Kuroda tells Ikki to prove he has the right to fight him, but Ikki is already prepared. He throws down a pile of student cards belonging to Kuroda's goons he defeated earlier, proving he passed Kuroda's test. Kuroda summons his frightening device, Orochimaru, the blade that earned him the title Sword Eater, and Ikki responds by summoning his old and reliable blade Intetsu. With a manic grin, Kuroda claims he loves fighting swordsmen and rushes at Ikki. Although Ikki blocks several attacks, his opponent soon moves so fast that Ikki can't keep track. Orochimaru then shifts into its snake-like form, allowing Kuroda to strike from a distance. He explains that his sword can close the gap between him and any other swordsman, no matter how far away they are. Stella instantly understands why people call him the Sword Eater, and she also points out that Ikki has no way to control the distance when he is constantly being outranged. Even so, she insists that Ikki is not the kind of person who breaks easily. Ikki proves her right. He charges forward, using perfect vision to read and block Kuroda's extending strikes. When Ikki tries to stab his opponent, Kuroda dodges with incredible speed, then launches a blisteringly fast counterattack and slices across Ikki's torso. He's impressed that Ikki manages to evade it, but that cut gives Ikki the insight he needs. Ikki realizes that Kuroda used the same overwhelming speed to defeat the last samurai. And according to Ikki, the true source of Kuroda's power is his abnormal reaction time, where Kuroda moves almost 6 times faster than an ordinary human, and that lightning speed is the reason Ikki struggles to keep up. Stella then understands why Kuroda's sword seems to vanish in mid-action, and Kuroda congratulates Ikki for figuring out his marginal counter. But he also says Ikki can't do anything about it because marginal counter is a natural talent, not a technique someone can learn. Despite hearing that, Ikki refuses to accept defeat and vows to surpass him. Kuroda unleashes a storm of attacks, but Ikki blocks them using irregular guard. Eventually, Ikki stumbles over a piece of wood, and Kuroda slices his chest. As the battle continues, Stella watches closely and notices something important, which Ayase sees too, and that is that Ikki is losing in the exact same way her father once did. She panics, wanting to stop the fight, but Stella holds her back and tells Ayase that if Ikki quits now, she will never get the dojo back. Stella points out that Ikki is smiling through the entire duel, completely unafraid, and asks Ayase if her father ever truly regretted fighting Kuroda. Ayase snaps back angrily, insisting that Kato regretted everything because they lost their home, but Stella gently disagrees. She explains that Kato, just like Ikki, was a proud swordsman, and deep down, Kato must have felt joy that someone strong challenged him, even if it ended in defeat. Ayase recalls the expression on her father's face during the duel, and she remembers that he was smiling. Tears rise in her eyes as she realizes she never understood the heart of a true swordsman, and she thinks back to the moment Kato collapsed in her arms and apologized. Now she understands that the apology wasn't for her, but it was meant for Kuroda, and Kato regretted only that his aging body couldn't show its full potential. Back in the battle, Ikki and Kuroda momentarily pause their clash, and the girls notice that Kuroda's weakness is stamina, and that his fierce, beast-like style uses far more energy than normal swordsmanship, and the longer the fight drags on, the more he tires. Both duelists acknowledge each other's strength and admit they're enjoying the match. Ikki asks Kuroda if Kato enjoyed their battle long ago, and Kuroda responds that he did. Ikki then declares that to both Kuroda and Ayase, he will restore the dojo to its rightful family. For the final exchange, Ikki gathers every bit of his power into one ultimate slash. Kuroda responds by unleashing multiple slashes from all directions. When Ikki raises his blade, both Ayase and Kuroda instantly recognize the stance, as it is the exact technique Kato once used. But this time, the strike connects, knocking Kuroda down and ending the battle. Ayase is stunned when she realizes Ikki used her family's technique, Teni Muvu, and Stella explains that Ikki learned it from Ayase thanks to his blade steel ability. Defeated, Kuroda prepares to leave, but before walking out, he asks Ikki for his name. When Ikki tells him, Kuroda promises they will meet again in the tournament. After he's gone, Ayase breaks down crying, and she apologizes, saying she failed to live up to her family's technique. Ikki gently corrects her, saying that the only reason he could perform Kato's technique was because she used it first, and that nobody understands Kato's swordsmanship more deeply than Ayase, which proves that she is, without question, the rightful successor. Strengthened by his words, Ayase slowly begins restoring the dojo, and the next day, Stella tells Ikki that Ayase confessed everything to the school committee. Because of that, she has been removed from the selection matches and suspended for 10 days. Ikki then receives a message from Ayase, sharing wonderful news that Kato has woken up. Stella is about to hold Ikki's hand in a romantic moment, but Shizuku and Alice suddenly appear, ruining the moment. Ikki looks down at his hand, the same hand Ayase once said she liked, the one that reminded her of her father's hand, and reflects on everything that has happened. Weeks later, both Ikki and Stella win their 12th selection match, and because of it, the chairman sends them on a week-long vacation. A short while earlier, the two of them stood inside the chairman's office as she explained that first-year students looked to them as symbols of hope. She then told them that they had been invited to the Academy's training camp in Okutama, where they could push themselves even harder. Stella immediately calls the trip a premarital vacation, and when she notices a waterfall in the brochure, she tells Ikki they should explore it later. Ikki agrees right away because he wants his beloved princess to enjoy herself as much as possible. Meanwhile, Shizuku is with Alice. Feeling gloomy that Ikki is heading on a trip with Stella, she asks Alice to join her on a journey of her own, but he explains that he has an appointment to attend. He sends her off with a teasing remark, saying he suspects Ikki and Stella's outing is more than just a sweet couple's holiday. Then Shizuku arrives at the Kurogain family home, and when she opens the door to her room, her cat jumps up to greet her. Shizuku then flips through old family albums filled with photos of Ikki when the maid enters to tell her that her father is waiting in the drawing room. There, the father says that he wanted to check on her and expresses pride in her 12 straight victories, which proves she's worthy of the Kurogain name. This only angers Shizuku, and she demands to know if he even cares about Ikki, who's also undefeated. Her father says he does, but Shizuku doesn't believe a word of it and storms back to her room, calling him a liar. Back in Okutama, Ikki and Stella reach the special training grounds and run into several student council members. Before long, Stella and Renren begin an intense game of badminton, using their abilities to supercharge every swing, while the others watch in disbelief. As Stella mops the floors, Kanada explains that they are responsible for cleaning the training camp because the tournament representatives will be training there in a month. And Stella complains that the student council's duties are surprisingly boring. Mesogi adds that the chairman sent Ikki and Stella because the 4 student council members alone would never be able to clean the entire place. He also mentions that the student council president, Toka, has wanted to meet them for a while. When Ikki asks where she is, Mesogi claims she's slacking off, but Kanada corrects him, saying Toka has business to handle elsewhere. Stella, however, sulks because this means she won't get her romantic waterfall moment yet. Back at the training grounds, Stella starts telling the student council members about her waterfall plans with Ikki. When Ikki asks if the cleaning is finished for the day, Kanada confirms it is, and Mesogi adds that any leftover chores will be forced on Toka later. Saiju then informs them that the waterfall is about an hour away and suggests they go before sunset. Hearing this, Ikki tells Stella it's time to head out, but he notices she looks distracted. As Ikki and Stella walk deeper into the forest, he notices her face starts looking pale. He suggests they return to the camp, but Stella refuses, saying she wants to enjoy some peaceful time alone with him. When he tries to argue, she gently pushes him to keep walking. Back in the woods, Stella's condition worsens. She admits she has been dizzy for a while and dramatically assumes that he must have gotten her pregnant from his kisses. But Ikki quickly shuts that down, insisting it's impossible and explaining that she simply has a fever. He suggests they head back, and Stella refuses to waste their special time together, but seeing that she's getting worse, he lifts her into his arms to take her back to camp. Suddenly, rain begins to pour down, and unbeknownst to them, A suspicious figure watches them from the trees above. Icky carries Stella to a small mountain lodge, and after covering her with a blanket, he realizes she is burning up and tells her she needs to take off her clothes before her fever worsens. Stella feels nervous with his request, so Icky removes his own wet uniform as well, hoping to help her feel less embarrassed. Stella lets out a small laugh, remembering the first time they met. She begins removing her clothes, but her strength fades, so Icky offers to help her, and she agrees. Trying to stay calm, he helps her remove her knee-high socks. Then comes the top. Icky unbuttons it slowly, struggling to stay composed, but he eventually manages to finish without painting the whole room white. But then Stella asks him to undo her pepperoni covers, saying that she struggles to breathe. Without much choice, Icky summons every ounce of willpower he has left and manages to help her. Afterward, she quietly thanks him and then shyly points out that he is saluting her. Embarrassed, Icky explains that it's a perfectly normal reaction for guys and begs her to forget it. However, Stella says she's happy that he reacts that way around her, and then she asks him if he wants to expand her domain. While other men would jump the gun, Icky apologizes and says he can't give her an answer yet. He explains that he wants to be able to announce to the whole world that he loves her, and he can't do that if their relationship moves too fast, too soon. Stella accepts his reasoning, saying it shows how serious he is. Just then, Icky hears a noise outside the lodge. When he steps out, a giant golem is about to crush the cabin. He quickly uses Itoshura to save Stella and destroy the monster. However, the golem splits into several smaller ones, and Icky is soon overwhelmed. When the golems begin moving towards Stella, Renren jumps in to protect her while Saiju battles the others. Renren places Stella back into Icky's arms before returning to the fight. Misogi appears and explains that the golems are being remotely controlled by a blazer. At that moment, Toka arrives, unleashing a massive lightning strike that obliterates the golems and the man operating them. Icky stares at the crackling energy surrounding Toka, amazed that he is finally witnessing the power of the president, one of last year's top 4 in the tournament. Meanwhile, Shizuku receives an email notification on her phone, and when she opens it, she sees that her next opponent is none other than Toka. For as long as she can remember, Shizuku has been respected by every adult in the Kurogain main family, and ever since childhood. She'd shown great promise as a blazer, but despite the praise, she grew sick of dealing with these troublesome creatures called humans. But one day, a man unlike anyone else ignored her privilege completely. It was Icky who told her she was wrong, and from that moment, she decided she would stay by her big brother's side no matter what. Now, in the present, she walked boldly into the arena, prepared to face Toka. Sometime earlier, Icky and Stella had told Alice about their encounter with the golems. When Alice asked if they had figured out who was behind the attack, Icky explained that the student council had investigated it right after rescuing them. Alice then asked how strong Toka was, and Icky said she lived up to every rumor. That was when Stella mentioned that Shizuku would be fighting Toka in her next selection match. Alice added that Shizuku was having mock battles that day against high-level lightning users to prepare. Stella noted that lightning was supposed to be a water user's natural enemy, but Alice pointed out that this didn't apply to Shizuku, as her high-level water manipulation allowed her to create ultra-pure water, which is water that is so pure that lightning couldn't pass through it. Hearing that, Stella said Shizuku had a real chance. However, Icky admitted that while he wanted Shizuku to win, he didn't want her to push herself too far, and he'd be fine as long as she came out safe. Later, after training, Shizuku is in the showers when Stella comes to check on her. Shizuku confesses that she is nervous, as Toka is on a whole different level from her previous opponents. Still, she insists that it won't affect her performance. Stella then tells her that Icky is worried. That evening, Shizuku asks Alice why Icky and Stella are so worried, and Alice explains that during their trip, they witnessed the devastating power of Toka's sword, Reikiri. Shizuku mutters that Icky would never worry like this if Stella were the one fighting Toka, and then admits that she doesn't feel like a knight strong enough to be recognized by Icky. The next day, the match begins, and Shizuku and Toka step into the arena, ready for battle. But when the whistle blows, both knights draw their swords, and then do absolutely nothing. The audience is confused, but Icky immediately realizes it's a standoff, and that they are waiting for the other to make the first move because one wrong step could mean death. Icky points out that Shizuku is being cautious because Toka possesses the ultimate close-range trump card, Reikiri, and she has won every previous match using that attack. Stella reminds Icky that Toka lost the 7 Stars tournament last year, meaning there is a way to counter it, but Icky explains that her opponent had been a spear user who stayed completely out of Reikiri's range, and no one has ever beaten Toka in close combat, as they are always cut down by her lightning-fast slash. Icky predicts that Shizuku will focus on defense since she excels in long-range magic battles, but suddenly, Shizuku launches a barrage of ice attacks. Toka deflects everything, and Shizuku blocks Toka's lightning strikes before unleashing a huge wave of water that surges toward her. Toka shatters everything as she charges. Eventually, Shizuku traps Toka in ice and hurls a massive iceberg at her, but Toka cuts the iceberg apart with ease, earning cheers from the crowd. Then Toka vanishes in a burst of speed. She appears in front of Shizuku, and Shizuku barely blocks the attack. Toka closes in again and strikes, only to slice through a water clone, and the real Shizuku notices a cut on her arm. Before she can regroup, Toka overwhelms her with rapid attacks. Stella asks Ikki why Shizuku suddenly can't follow Toka's movements, and Ikki explains that Toka is using the same move Nan-na once used to sneak up on him. Nan-ni appears beside them, confirming that Toka is using an old martial arts technique called Nukiashi, then demonstrates it by sneaking behind Stella and teasing her, throwing Stella into a fluster. The chairman explains to Ikki that both Toka and Nan-ni can use Nukiashi because they trained under the same knight, Nangu, the god of war. She adds that Shizuku will never beat that technique, but Ikki believes Shizuku has one final trump card ready, one that can counter Reikiri at close range. Stella shouts encouragement from the stands, motivating Shizuku to push forward. Shizuku unleashes a barrage of water and ice attacks, but Toka shreds through all of them and deals a clean hit, only to discover yet another water clone. Mist fills the arena as Shizuku surrounds Toka with countless clones. Toka destroys them all one by one, while Shizuku moves in for the finishing blow with her strongest water slash, but Toka strikes her down with Reikiri. A blinding flash shreds the mist instantly, and in a single, clean blow, Shizuku falls. The commentators announce Toka's victory as she calmly walks away, undefeated. Later, Shizuku wakes in the hospital, and Stella tries to comfort her, but Shizuku, exhausted, asks to be alone. After the others leave, Ikki tells Stella he is proud to see that Shizuku has truly become stronger. Meanwhile, Alice hugs Shizuku gently and tells her that her brother watched her fight until the very end. Hearing that, Shizuku finally breaks down in tears. Elsewhere, upon hearing of Shizuku's defeat, Ikki's father instructs the shady subordinate working with him to begin their next move. Days later, Stella wins her 14th match of the tournament by pure domination, and afterward she and Ikki go for a walk. She talks about how, in her latest battle, she went all out, and she credits it to Ikki's training that always gets the best out of her. They talk about their promise to reach the top and face each other in the finals of the 7 Stars tournament, and with the mood just right, they share a kiss, unaware that a mysterious man is hiding in the bushes. Later, the students gather outside to look at new posters revealing the current frontrunners of the selection matches. During that time, the chairman calls Ikki to her office. She informs him that Akaza, one of his father's loyal puppets in the Magic Knight Federation, has been slithering around the school, and they're worried he's up to something behind the scenes. It frustrates her, since she likes to believe Ikki's father isn't the type to pull dirty tricks. Ikki insists that Akaza isn't following the old man's orders. The Greasy Weasel has always hated him. Ikki apologizes for the trouble and says he should step back for a while, but the chairman takes offense and tells him that as his teacher, protecting him is her responsibility. Later, Ikki and Stella go to the student council room, only to find the clumsy president face-planting with her pinky dinky completely exposed. Nenni begins yelling at the others to act more professionally, but Ikki cuts in, asking why they were summoned. Toka introduces herself, prompting Stella to quietly tease that her plot cover is showing, which embarrasses her even more. Ikki and Stella are stunned to see a completely different side of Toka than the fearsome warrior they imagined. Soon after, the group visits an institution where Toka plays with the children there. Then the kids recognize Stella and rush to her next, begging her to play with them, which she gladly does. Mesogi remarks that Shizuku is so strong that she forced Toka to remove her glasses, and Ikki correctly guesses that Toka's noble art works better the worse her eyesight becomes. Toka explains that her power, reverse sight, allows her to see the electric currents in people's brains, letting her read their state of mind in battle. She's not surprised Ikki realized she used it to see through all of Shizuku's traps. On the sidelines, Ikki comments to Mesogi that he can't look away from Toka, and Mesogi explains that despite her incredible abilities, the true source of Toka's strength is all around them, which is the people she protects. He tells Ikki the story of a violent, broken child who was nearly murdered by his own parents, but Toka refused to abandon him. He shares how Toka once said that before her parents died, they left her with love and smiles, and she wants to pass that same warmth on to others. Hearing this makes Ikki respect her even more. On the bus ride home, Ikki thinks about how Toka draws her strength from love and purpose, and it makes him wonder what his source is. When he and Stella step off the bus, the others rush over with an article showing the two of them caught kissing, and Stella is furious, seeing Ikki labeled a criminal for loving her. Just then, a car pulls up, and Akaza steps out, asking Ikki to come with him to the moral committee. Stella wants to stop him, but Ikki follows the command and gets into the car. They arrive at the Japanese branch of the International Magic Knight Federation, where Ikki is questioned about his relationship with Stella. Ikki denies any indecent behavior and firmly declares that they love each other. Later, Ikki is thrown back into his confinement room and told that the next session will begin the following morning. Meanwhile, after Stella defeats her next opponent, some students gossip about her and Ikki doing the freaky, which disturbs her. After the match, she goes back to her room and quietly rests her head on Ikki's bed, missing him. Meanwhile, Ikki is taken to a room in the facility to fight his next selection match. At the same time, Stella notices that even worse rumors about Ikki are spreading. During dinner at the cafeteria, Stella blames herself. So Shizuku blasts her into the wall with a water spell and tells her that Ikki is enduring all this to protect their relationship. Realizing this, Stella tells herself to lock in. After Ikki defeats another nameless opponent, Yuri secretly slips him a package, which has Stella's hair inside it. On the 9th day of confinement, Ikki tells Akaza he wants to appeal directly to his father Itsuki, and thanks to the chairman's influence, the meeting is arranged. When Ikki meets his father, Itsuki praises him for defeating stronger opponents in the selection matches. Ikki then asks if Itsuki will acknowledge him if he wins the 7 Stars tournament, and Itsuki replies that he does acknowledge Ikki, but still refuses to teach him, saying he wants Ikki to amount to nothing. Ikki breaks down, realizing his father never cared for him at all. Then, after winning his 19th match, Ikki confronts Akaza, who tells him that his final match to become a knight will be against Toka, and that if he wins, he becomes a knight and earns his freedom, but if he loses, he must give up his dream of becoming a magic knight forever. Days later, Ikki sits alone in his cell, still crushed by his father's words, wondering if everything he's fought for has truly been meaningless. Meanwhile, Toka and Mesogi wait in a quiet room for someone to arrive, and that someone turns out to be Shizuku. They sit her down, and Toka explains that she knows exactly what's happening to Ikki and how bad his condition is, but because she has no authority to interfere, she feels helpless. She tells Shizuku that she never holds back in a battle, but knows that Ikki won't back down despite his condition. So out of genuine concern for Ikki, she asks Shizuku to convince him to forfeit the match. Shizuku vents to Alice and asks for his advice on what she needs to do, and Alice tells her to follow her heart. Meanwhile, Toka feels unsure of what to do herself, but Mesogi assures her and encourages her to do the best that she can. Then the final day of the battle arrives, and while Stella and everyone else are battling for the 7 Stars tournament, all eyes are on one battle. The match between the knight who stands at the top, Toka, versus the knight who climbed from the bottom, Ikki. News helicopters surround the arena, broadcasting the fight to the entire world, and both Nenni and the chairman know perfectly well that the broadcast exists for one reason only, which is to publicly humiliate Ikki, which is what his father wanted. Suddenly, an old prune geezer who turns out to be the god of war himself, Nangu, pops up, shocking Nenna with his presence. He teases Nanny for still looking cute, but she refuses to accept any compliments from an old dude. The chairman welcomes him and asks if he's here to watch his former student, Toka, and Nangu admits that while he's here to see her, he's also curious to see Ikki, who is the grandson of his former rival, Ryoma, the last samurai. Just then, Akaza pops up and says that the match might not even happen, which confuses the chairman. Just then, the arena's speaker announces that the battle is starting, but with Ikki still missing, he has 15 minutes to appear, or he will be considered forfeiting. The chairman asks Akaza if he didn't drive Ikki there with him, but Akaza states that Ikki left by himself early that morning without telling anyone. Meanwhile, in some place far away, Ikki is trying to get to the arena, running while his entire world is drained of its color. In the middle of his desperation, he imagines his grandfather Ryoma motivating him not to give up, like he always did in the past. But another part of Ikki screams brutally at him that those words were nonsense and he should just let go of his dreams. But Ikki continues running, as the flame inside him refuses to die like he's All Might. Then he sees the light at the end of the dark path and color returns to his world. Standing before him is Shizuku, and she wants nothing more than to tell her beloved brother to stop. But she knows that he won't even if his feet start bleeding, so instead, she shows him something else. Ikki looks ahead and sees all his friends, classmates, and teachers standing together, cheering him on and believing in him with their whole hearts. Then Stella steps forward, proudly holding her winning medal, and she tells Ikki that she has qualified for the 7 Stars tournament and that she's waiting for him to fulfill his promise of joining her there. With that, Ikki sprints forward once more, remembering what he still has to protect. In the backstage, Tokai hears from Mesogi that Ikki has arrived, and she smiles, happy to know that he is here. Then, with everyone watching, the two fighters step onto the arena and face each other for the final bout. Tokai apologizes for having to fight him while he's not at full strength, and admits that ever since she first saw him, she has truly wanted to face him one-on-one. Ikki shares the same feeling, and the two summon their swords, Toka with her Thunderblade, and Ikki with his Intetsu, ready to defeat Toka's best with his best. Immediately, Ikki activates his trump card, Ito Ashura, shocking everyone, but from the stands, Stella believes he has a plan to win. In his head, Ikki knows that he can't beat Toka in close combat, so he decides to pour every last bit of his life's energy into one precise and devastating attack. They both get into their stance, ready to strike, and like a battle between the unstoppable force against the immovable object, even changing the art style with how intense the pressure of their powers is. Toka uses her Reikiri, while Ikki uses Reikao, an attack that lasts a second, which is so devastating that he starts bleeding from his body. The arena freezes, and when the clash of power is over, Toka lies unconscious on the floor and Ikki remains standing as the victor. Akaza storms the arena in disbelief and tries to attack Ikki, but Stella bursts in from behind, sends this man flying back to Loserville, and she catches Ikki before he collapses. In her arms, Ikki feels the warmth of the person who truly loves him. With the whole world watching, he tells Stella that he loves her and asks her to marry him. While everyone gasps, Stella immediately accepts before they share a kiss. Elsewhere, Ikki's father receives a call from the Vermilion family, and he starts by apologizing for Ikki's sudden proposal, but they interrupt and tell him there is nothing to apologize for. Instead, the Vermilion tells Itsuki that he has to remove his dirty schemes and political games from around Stella and Ikki, or the Vermilion family will hunt him down. The next day, all the winners, including Ikki, Stella, and Alice, stand before the Academy as they are announced as representatives for the 7 Stars tournament. Toka steps up to congratulate them and tells Ikki how proud she is, and Ikki thanks her sincerely for their battle, saying it pushed him to his limits. Then, in front of everyone, Toka nominates Ikki as the leader of their generation. Ikki hesitates, but the entire crowd erupts in agreement, calling him their generation's LeBron James. Then, with the Academy's flag in his hand and Stella at his side, Ikki admits to Stella that he once didn't care about anyone's opinion, but now, he feels happy to be acknowledged, especially from the ones he loves. Later, he sits down with Stella to talk about marriage, but Shizuku and Alice pop up to stop and remind him they still have time before that, so Ikki and Stella should withhold from involving Ikki using his glizzy. If you watch this anime recap until the end, comment down below The Weak Knight and the Fire Princess, and if you love anime recaps like this, watch this video.